Leftist leader Luiz Inácio Lula Da Silva is all set to be sworn in as Brazil's new president. He will take the oath of office under a heavy blanket of security in the Brazilian capital, amid threats of violence by the supporters of his predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro. Authorities have deployed around 10,000 security personnel. Guests will have to go through strict searches at the ceremony. The tight security cover comes after one of Bolsonaro's supporters was arrested last week for a suspected bomb plot. The alleged plotter reportedly aimed to create chaos ahead of President-elect Lula Da Silva's inauguration. Meanwhile, delegations from 50 nations and 19 heads of state have confirmed their presence for Lula's swearing-in ceremony. Some 300,000 Brazilians are expected to gather for the big moment when Lula dons the presidential sash.
Muito feliz, muito emocionado com essa vitória. Eu acho que é maior do que um partido, do que um candidato, sabe? Fala sobre a vitória de um país, de uma sociedade, de uma galera que acredita que dá pra gente renovar a esperança e consertar tudo que foi desmantelado. Então acho que é a vitória da democracia contra o fascismo mesmo, sabe?
Lula defeated Bolsonaro in the October elections, marking the end of Brazil's most right-wing government in decades. The incoming president now faces the challenge of improving Brazil's stagnant economy and uniting the highly polarized nation. Meanwhile, his predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro, left for Florida in the United States on Friday in an apparent move to avoid handing over the presidential sash to his rival. Bolsonaro is yet to even acknowledge Lula's victory. Before flying to Florida, Bolsonaro delivered a teary address to his supporters, and while he condemned the bomb plot, terming it a terrorist act, he also praised the protesters who've been camping outside army barracks across Brazil, demanding a military coup in the country. For more on this, we're now joined by Gustavo Ribeiro, founder and editor-in-chief of the Brazilian Report, a website on Brazilian politics and economy. Mr. Ribeiro, thanks very much for speaking to WION, and a very happy new year to you. Now, the transfer of power from Jair Bolsonaro to Lula Da Silva has been far from smooth. Bolsonaro has refused to even acknowledge Lula's win, and then there are all these threats of violence. Explain to us the flux that Brazilian politics is currently going through.
Happy New Year. We are in many ways in unprecedented times, at least when we consider the democratic period that Brazil has experienced since 1985. Like you said, for the first time we had a president who did not acknowledge the electoral results, but more than that, he has tried for the most part of his 4-year term to sow distrust in Brazil's electronic voting system, which is a system that has never faced credible fraud allegations. And also Bolsonaro, throughout his term, has incited violent behaviors, and we have seen in Brazil political violence escalate this for months now, and it has reached a boiling point now because police found on Christmas Eve a bomb planted near the Brasilia airport, and we have experienced this past week here in Brasilia at least 6 times that the bomb squad was activated because bags were left unattended in public spaces. And terrorism has never been a Brazilian problem, and the fact that we have seen these kind of worries shows how weird this passation of power has been.
Absolutely unprecedented in many ways. There are threats of violence. We're talking about that alleged bomb plot, and there are those who are actually protesting outside army barracks, seeking a coup, demanding a military coup. What do you see as the major challenges that lie ahead for Lula Da Silva as he takes over the reins of a highly polarized nation?
First is get almost half of the population to see him as a legitimate leader, because this was the tightest presidential runoff in Brazilian history. Lula won with just 50.9% of the vote, so a very, very slim, razor-thin margin. And he will have to deliver results quickly, because I doubt he will ever benefit from that proverbial honeymoon period that new incoming heads of state sometimes enjoy. And the challenges abound in Brazil, because we have seen the return of hunger, education indicators have slumped, especially because of the pandemic. Brazil was one of the countries with the more lengthy school closures in the world. We have seen healthcare infrastructure dismantled over these past few years. Brazil has always been a country proud of having one of the best vaccination programs in the world, able to vaccinate more than 3 million people any given day. And we have seen, for instance, vaccination rates for polio and for many diseases to drop way below our targets. So the challenges we have challenges galore here, and if Lula does not, and also all of that in a cash-strapped government. And Bolsonaro, just before the last hours of his administration, he signed a decree making hefty tax waivers, something that will further hamper Lula's ability to operate with the federal budget. So he will have a shortage of money, but an abundance of challenges. And if he doesn't deliver results quickly, he may face a lot of pushback and a lot of pressure from more conservative sectors.
Shortage of cash, abundance of challenges. I think that pretty much summarizes the situation that Brazil faces today as the new president gets set to take over. On that note, Gustavo Ribeiro, thanks so much for speaking to WION.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.